Molly, tell me you have filled out your men's and women's brackets already.
You know I filled out my women's. I'm almost done with my men's. Thank you for that text this morning to remind me to do that because I had thought I'd done it already.
Well, we're going to talk about who our Final Four predictions are at the end. But first, let's jump into some numbers from this past weekend. Let's start with the selection show. CBS, pretty big number there. Their second best selection show since 2019. Down around 3% from last year, but really a strong number. Best sports performance of anything over the weekend. Did you check out that show, Molly?
I did. Even though I knew Northwestern was not going to be selected, I did watch a little bit of it. I mean, I love March Madness, Austin. I love it on the men's side. I love it on the women's side. It's just such an excuse to watch basketball all day, every day, and I get to pretend it's my job.
Well, the selection show in particular, I like the fact they're getting into it. In the first couple of minutes, they're already revealing brackets. 34 minutes into that CBS show, you had the full men's bracket. They're not dragging it out. Even though it's an hour-long show, they're not dragging out the whole thing. They give you analysis the rest of the time, but people want the bracket. They want to start filling it out. Total respect to CBS for getting that done in such a quick window.
Yeah, and the big basketball fans are going to stick around for that analysis. So they're pleasing the casual fan by getting into it quickly. But then the ones that really want to get into the weeds of it, CBS is giving them that too.
So that was 6 p.m. on Sunday, 8 o'clock on ESPN. You had the women's tournament bracket reveal. That was the second best number since I think around 2005. No surprise that it's down from last year. Everything's down from the Caitlin Clark-driven numbers from last year. But it is reflective of kind of everything we've seen this season around women's college basketball. Down pretty sharply from last season. That was a historic season, but well above numbers from 2, 3, 4 years ago and even further back. I think that portends incredibly well for what the women's tournament is going to be able to deliver on ESPN airwaves.
And you and I have talked about this too, is that, yes, the numbers are all down from last year. Actually, they're not entirely down. ESPN's are up a little, but we know they
did not have a lot of Caitlin Clark coverage last year.
But women's college basketball is trending up. And if you look at how the brackets shape out, you have the chance for a USC-UConn matchup in the Elite Eight. ESPN is going to draw some strong numbers.
Is that good, though? USC-UConn, isn't that something you wanted to maybe set up for the Final Four if you're the committee making these brackets? It seems like there was a miss, actually, on my end.
I don't know. USC-UConn, they played already this season, so we did see that game happen.
So has USC-UCLA. They've played twice.
They played 3 times.
So these two titans, Juju and Paige, that's who people want to watch, that maybe you could have made them meet in the Final Four. That's the way I would have gone if I were the selection committee.
Well, good thing you and I are not on the selection committee.
No, I don't need that. And I don't need the hate that Bubba Cunningham was getting. That's all anyone was talking about on Sunday after the selection show was Bubba Cunningham, who chaired that committee on the men's side. Okay. Chapel Hill making in very surprisingly. But, maybe they kind of redeemed themselves. They whooped San Diego State on Tuesday night in that first 4 game. I guess it was kind of to send a message we do belong in the dance. So now I'm curious how they're going to perform.
They're coming in with a revenge attitude. And everybody loves an underdog. Everyone loves a Cinderella story.
I'm not calling Chapel Hill an underdog.
Okay, that's fair.
I'll never call them that.
I am looking out for some Cinderella stories. Do you remember when Loyola of Chicago went on that magical run? I think it was 2017, 2018. I love stuff like that. Let's keep doing that.
I love it in the first round, but I'm more in the vein of network executives. That's fine. Let's see some upsets in the first round, but I want to see the best teams in the sport play deeper in the Sweet 16, in the Elite Eight, and absolutely in the Final Four. Do I really want to see Loyola or a school like that make it all the way to the Final Four? I mean, it's nice, but I want to see the best teams in the sport make it that far.
That's fair, but I also do think it can draw in the more casual fan as well. Because people love a Cinderella story. People love a storyline.
They love them early on. I'd love seeing buzzer beaters, whether it was, Creighton or Butler or whoever back in the day when they're first making a name for themselves. I love seeing that in the first round. And I'm sure there's a school we don't really know much about right now that is going to do that in the first round on the men's or the women's side. We're going to see some really great finishes, I'm sure, over the next couple of weeks.
But it could be the next Glory Road, Austin.
We all want to see the next Glory Road. We all want to see the next Disney movie. But Molly, some of the other numbers coming out of the men's conference tournament games, similar to how the women performed for Fox Sports out of the Big East, really impressive numbers for the Big East men's tournament, a record for Fox Sports. The title game, Rick Pitino back with St. John's in that game. It was a record for Fox on the title game. You have to be confident that, especially with so many Big East teams making the tournament, that those are going to perform well.
I have such a soft spot for the Big East, and I think maybe it's because they don't really do football. They're just such a basketball-dominant conference. And plus, the tournament's always played at MSG and Mohegan Sun on the men's and women's side. It's local to me. Like, I love the Big East, and I have literally no affiliation with it. So I will be watching those games.
I'm the opposite, Molly. I grew up and became a college basketball fan in the South, in Charlotte, North Carolina, where they wheel in televisions to middle school and high school so you can watch the games. This is in the late to mid 90s. It was very interesting for me coming from the Northeast. That was not something I remember happening in elementary school. But the ACC tournament was like kind of lower. Even with that Duke, North Carolina matchup in the semifinals on Friday night, the audience for that semifinal on ESPN wasn't even close to what the matchups were drawing during the regular season or what some of the past semifinal matchups between Duke and North Carolina drew. I think a lot of viewers maybe tuned out at halftime when Duke was up around 20, even without Cooper Flagg. That's another reason I think the audience numbers may have been soft. But Carolina came back and really made that a game. And I thought the audience would have been a little bit higher. And then on Saturday night, that Duke-Louisville men's final was down from last year's number.
You and I talked last week on the pod about rivalries, and that Duke-UNC one is a classic one. And I think that's part of the reason people love March Madness so much, right? Like, you get to develop new rivalries. You get to see these storylines play out. It's such good storytelling. And for CBS, TNT, ESPN, like, they love that too. The producers are so excited about what's coming up.
And I got to give the flowers to the Big Ten, your conference, that men's title game, the best number out of the weekend, the best Big Ten title game. This was CBS since 2014. Really strong number there for CBS.
I was watching the Big Ten tournament. I was so proud of my boys. Northwestern was looking for one last chance with their two top scorers out for the season. They were running. They could have made the NCAA tournament. Announcers were talking about it, saying how Chris Collins could have been coach of the year. Oh, my heart. But, I do love the Big Ten, and I'm excited for what's coming.
I had more realistic expectations. I was really happy that the ACC tournament was in Charlotte. I got to take in the first Georgia Tech game, and we did beat UVA. I didn't really want to go to the Duke game after that because I thought Cooper Flagg and Duke were going to whoop us. I had a little bit of hope when Cooper Flagg went down there. Then I start getting texts from people when we're up 14. People, stop texting me in the middle of potential Georgia Tech victories. This happened during the Georgia football game. As soon as people start texting me, boom, karma kicks in. We get our butts kicked by Duke.
I think I did that to you both times, actually, because I did.
No more, Molly. No more.
I do remember texting you. I asked you if you were watching Tech, and you said, "Is the Pope Catholic?" And I said, "Sources tell me so."
Yeah, so no more texting me in the middle of games, please. I'm putting the phone away.
Well, last week we broke down the men's advertising for March Madness. I have numbers from the women's. I reported it this week. Austin, I was texting you when I was getting these numbers because they are mind-boggling to me. So ESPN has sold several ad slots for the 30-second unit in the championship game for $1.5 million. That's the highest they've ever reached. But what's even more impressive to me is the average numbers. So in fiscal year 23, when you had 9.9 million viewers for LSU and Iowa, that was on ABC and ESPN2. Also, the first time it was on broadcast TV, a 30-second spot averaged $65,830. Last year, you had 18.9 million people tune in for South Carolina, Iowa on ABC and ESPN, and that ad price jumped to $188,870 average. This year, we don't know who's going to be in the final. The average for a 30-second spot is $438,692. Like, think about that. You went from $65,000 to $438,000 in 2 years, and there's no Caitlin Clark playing this year.
You talked about it. It continues to be a sport on the rise. The numbers for the title game, I don't care who it plays in the final on the women's side. The numbers are going to crash. I don't think they're going to match either of the last 2 years' numbers where you had Caitlin Clark. But can it get back to where it was 3 seasons ago and be well above before the game moved to ABC when it was just on ESPN? I do think that ABC is going to help it carry it. But the numbers you're talking about, that's why ESPN renewed with the NCAA for this deal. They saw the strength of the property, and that whole package, obviously, it's a bunch of championships. It is buttressed by that NCAA women's basketball tournament. So I would spend a long time talking about whether they can break it off. They didn't. They kept it as part of this. And even in year one of a long-term deal, it looks like ESPN is getting a really good deal there.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. That was a steal for ESPN getting that tournament looped in with the rest of the tournaments, which are also valuable properties in themselves. I mean, volleyball, softball, baseball all draw strong numbers.
I think it's steal based on the numbers you're talking about the last 2 years. Let's see where the numbers settle in before we really call it a steal, right? Let's see what non-Caitlin numbers can deliver. Let's see what the tournament numbers are in the Final Four.
And we will, Austin, but I think they're going to be better than you think. I think it's not going to hit that 18.9 million that we saw last year, but it is going to be 23. If you want to make a bet, Austin, it's going to break 10 million. It's going to break that 9.9.
I've already lost a couple of stakes there. I was definitely under on all of my Caitlin Clark predictions last year, so I'm not going there again. I think they are going to continue to be strong, not drawing what 2024 and 2023 drew. Those were incredible numbers.
I think it's breaking 23.
All right, Molly, a bet I will make with you. I do not think that it gets above the 9.9 million viewers from 2 years ago, regardless of who plays in the game. Let's double down on the stake. Let's do it, Molly.
You already owe me one, Austin, so this is a risk-averse bet for me, but I think it breaks 23. I think it's going to come above that 9.9 million, especially if you have teams like UConn, USC, UCLA, South Carolina making deep runs. It will not come above 24. I agree with you on that side.
All right, Molly, I want to switch sports. I want to go from basketball. I want to talk about some auto racing, specifically Formula One. Season got started this past Saturday, just before midnight on ESPN. The Australian Grand Prix, around 1.1 million viewers, a record for that event. It was the first time Australia had led the calendar for F1 since 2019. Because of Ramadan, they took the start of the season out of the Arabian Peninsula, gave it back to Australia. But why am I talking about this number? Obviously, F1 is in the market for its new media rights deal. And TNT Sports' chief, Louis Silberwasser, this week made some news saying, like, yeah, we'd be interested in Formula One and UFC for that matter. What do you make of Silberwasser's comments?
It's not surprising to me, Austin. We've seen this, and we've talked about this extensively. They've been snapping up smaller sports properties and rights, but they're looking for that kind of flagship thing again.
UFC for sure, absolutely. And like you said, they've been snapping up rights, auto racing being one of them. They got back into NASCAR. They'll have some races this summer. So auto racing is not something that's new to TNT Sports these days.
So no, it's not surprising to me. They are going to have to compete with the heavy dollars from the streaming services, but they've got a little bit of cash to burn right now.
Yeah, money they didn't spend on the NBA. It's something I think that's important for people to remember. So TNT could be at the table for two of those big rights deals. Another thing that Silberwasser said that kind of piqued my interest was they've been a longtime partner of Major League Baseball. TBS has had postseason games and part of the regular season since around 2007, but going back to even 1973 when TBS's predecessor network started carrying Braves game. So long relationship with baseball. They are locked in through 2028. But Silberwasser was kind of asked by, my former colleague, John Arand, would they be interested in picking up these ESPN baseball rights that ESPN is going to be dropping after this season? He said, nah, we're kind of good. We don't necessarily want to take on those rights. So where do you think this package that ESPN is dropping might land?
You've got your smaller companies that are starting to dabble their toes into baseball. I mean, you've got Roku with that Sunday morning package. So I could see it splitting up a little.
Especially in the interim, until those 2028 deals, and we talked about this, until the Fox and the Turner deals expires, MLB just kind of has to figure out what they're going to do once ESPN is out for 26, 27, 28.
Yeah, I think it could land on even something like an Apple. We talked about that with how they've been dipping into MLS. Apple has Friday Night Baseball. It's doing well for them. They're happy with it. I could see it landing on a streaming service. And
if you go to Apple, you don't have to worry about numbers coming out because we won't ever see any of those.
Yeah, you're not going to know anything.
Yeah, because they have ties to baseball. They have some tie-up with Yes Network and some of the RSNs out there. So yeah, I think them testing out some things over the next couple of years might make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I see the package in the next couple of years becoming a more experimental package. I don't think it's landing with a legacy media partner.
Well, Molly, the Major League Baseball season also got underway this week. Started off on Tuesday with a Cubs-Dodgers game. It was a 2-game set there in Japan, and we were able to get the numbers for that first game. And I'm not talking about here in the U.S. This was like a 6 a.m. start. Those numbers are not going to be very strong. I'm talking about the numbers in Japan. 25 million people, around 20% of the country, tuned in for game one.
Clearly it's powerful. And percentage-wise, that's like Super Bowl level numbers, right?
For Japan, for a country that size, it is incredibly strong, the number of people that tuned in.
You're having 20% of the population tune in. That's a huge percentage. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is clearly a draw. I was in Japan in the fall, and baseball, I knew this. I'd never been to Japan before. I knew that Japan loved baseball. Being there, being in Tokyo and being Kyoto and just seeing the way the culture loves baseball.
Loves, always has for years, since World War II. It's also a testament to what the Dodgers are doing there, right? Adding not just Ohtani, but a lot of these Japanese players and making them the team of Japan. And this was the first real piece of, outside of merchandise sales, the first piece of media evidence that we've shown yeah, they are Japan's team by a long shot.
You don't think the Cubs were the ones drawing those numbers?
I don't think it was the Cubs. I don't think it was them. But, this number was almost twice what NLDS Game 5 Padres-Dodgers drew last season in Japan. That featured 2 Japanese starters. The record for a baseball game in Japan was the Italy-Japan World Baseball Classic 2023. And that was just a quarterfinal game. That was around 38 million viewers in Japan. So baseball, just incredibly huge over there.
Your ability to just pull numbers, I am so impressed. It's basically like a photographic memory there, Austin. I could probably ask you, what was a 1996 World Series rating, and you would know.
What was that? A Yankees World Series game? So probably a pretty impressive number there. I'm not going to pull it off the top of my head. Anything from when I started SBJ, though, yeah, I'm generally able to.
I couldn't even remember that the Yankees were playing in 1996. So see, you're just proving my point.
All right, Molly, one final thing about baseball. Our colleague Mike Mazzio had some news on Wednesday that the NBC regional sports networks that are still carrying Major League Baseball teams, I think we're talking the A's and the Giants and the Phillies, they now have created a local streaming solution. Why is this important? Heading into the season, I think it's now 26 of 30 MLB teams have solved that local in-market streaming solution, something that was always a knock on Major League Baseball. They have to be very happy, at least on this aspect. There are so many regional sports network issues to get through still, but on this particular issue, they got to be happy heading into the 2025 season.
We could talk about RSNs for an entire podcast based on everything that's going on in that atmosphere, but of course they're happy. You said it yourself, 26 out of 30 have solved that issue. Fans are going to be happy. You'll be able to watch your Orioles now, too. That's not related to NBC, but...
I'm always going to find a way to watch the O's, Molly. Always going to find a way. My Jurassic Park. Life finds a way. I find a way to watch the Orioles.
See, I'm just lucky living in New York. I got my Yes Network for my Yankees. I'm set.
All right, Molly, a league that is near and dear to your heart wrapped up on Monday night. That was Unrivaled. What did you think about the championship number? And just like the season overall, what is your final takeaway on that?
The viewership numbers were just about in tune with what TNT expected. It's a startup league, similar to how we talked about TGL. I personally loved that it was the Rose that won the championship and instead of the Lunar Owls, who only lost 1 game the entire season. We talked about this last week, but when I was there, it's a really, really cool experience, and I really liked the property itself. I was saying to my friend when we were watching that it's actually even easier to understand basketball plays when you're watching 3-on-3 versus 5-on-5. There's just fewer people to follow. But I'm like, oh, it's so clear when they're setting up the screen. It's so clear when you see the pick and roll versus just so much noise going on sometimes on 5-on-5. But I think it's a great TV property. TNT is happy with it. Unrivaled is thrilled. They think it couldn't have gone better. And then we talked about it last week. There might be a new model next year where they take the show on the road. And I really enjoyed it. It was very fun for me.
I will just slightly disagree with Unrivaled's assessment. I think maybe having some of your star players stick around and not go do ads that they had promised to do and maybe actually stay on the court, I think that would have been a better finish. But I am by no means writing off this league heading into year 2 because I think there's a lot that they can do. Obviously, the talent that comes in is going to be very important to that. We've talked about that a lot. And the numbers, yeah, they're on TNT and True TV, and those numbers were probably what you're going to expect, around half of what TGL was getting. I'd not writing it off after year 1 by any stretch.
And the TNT numbers were stronger than the True TV numbers, which is something...
everyone expects that. The True TV numbers, they're trying to turn this into a destination for sports, but that is going to be a multi-year process to get fans to tune into True TV outside of March Madness.
I remember going to their upfront before they'd even merged as a company, and True TV was just... It's such a different property now. It almost reminds me of kind of what the CW is trying to do, to just pivot from drama and entertainment into a sports property.
Yeah, they had cops and reality shows and things like that. That's what True TV was.
Yeah, and now it's the home of Unrivaled. It's just part of the largest trend in the industry, Austin, where everyone knows that live sports are the bread and butter, and it's what's going to bring in the viewership, the ad dollars, and the value overall.
All right, Maya, let's wrap things up like we talked about at the beginning. Let's give our bracket. Let's start with the women's side. Who do you got in your Final Four? Who do you got taking it all?
All right, my Final Four, and I'm not used to rooting for them because they used to be such a villain, but I have UConn taking the whole thing. I think it's Paige Becker's year. She deserves, that would be such a storyline, and that's what I want. And also, just they've been playing lights out recently. But my Final Four, I've got UCLA, UConn, South Carolina, Notre Dame. UConn wins it all.
I can't believe it, Molly. We have the same exact Final Four, and I do have UConn beating South Carolina in that finale. So stop copying my homework, please. I don't appreciate it. Please do your own work.
Or we're just sharing a brain cell, Austin.
All right, men's Final Four. Who do you got? Yeah, who do you got on the men's side?
All right, on the men's, ours is probably going to be a little different. I posted this on my Instagram story the other day. It's just a funny meme of Sandra Bullock when it's like me filling out my women's bracket and she's like locked in, and then it's me filling out the men's and it's from the Bird movie and she's like blindsided and she's like, okay. So that's kind of what's happened here. So let's see. In my Final Four, I have Auburn, Maryland, Duke, Illinois, with Auburn winning it all.
That is quite different from my bracket. I was apparently drinking the Greg Sankey sweet tea and put 3 SEC teams in the Final Four. I got Auburn, I got Florida, and I got Tennessee, and I have Duke as the other team. Then in the final, I have a matchup of Duke and Florida. I got the Gators winning it all.
Okay, at least we both have Duke in our final.
But I'm sure Greg Sankey is going to be happy that I have 3 SEC teams in there. They have really had a strong season.
I've got 2 Big Ten teams in there.